Book 2. When a Taker Dreams. Chapter 2. Maybe it will happen. Steele's fingers trembled as he dialed Sierra's number. Today he was determined to talk to her. He'd prefer to talk with her in person one-on-one. What he had to say needed to be said in person. He listened as her cell phone rang and rang. Finally, she picked up. Hello. Hi Sierra, it's me, Steele. I was hoping I would catch you. There is something I wanted to talk to you about. Really, Steele, and what is it? Sierra inquired. For a moment, he dared to hope that this might be an opportunity to get her back. Every fiber of his being tells him it's wrong to meet with her. But he couldn't stop himself. He wanted to see her. Steele stammered. Well, I was hoping I could drop by and talk to you in person. What I have to say is very important. Well, I'm busy today. But I'm free at noon tomorrow, Sierra declared. If that's a good time, I'm all yours. Steele was ecstatic. She said she was all his. He was sure Sierra's quick response meant she still had feelings for him. He confirmed the time and said his goodbyes and hung up the phone, feeling his life was turning around for good. The next day, Steele arrived 10 minutes early and used the extra time to check his attire and go over what he planned to say. He had stayed up half the night writing and rewriting his words of endearment and love for Sierra and the baby. He was sure even though his brother was married to Sierra, she had to know that her baby was his and that he should be the father raising their son. Steele double-checked his attire and the time and knocked on Sierra's front door at exactly 12 noon. Sierra was wearing a fuchsia pink pair of yoga pants and a sports shirt that clung to her body in all the right places. Come, Steele, have a seat. I made a fresh pitcher of homemade lemonade. It's all natural. I use honey as a sweetener. Thanks, it looks cool and refreshing, Steele said, sitting at the table across from her and noticing the pitcher of lemonade and what appeared to be a vanilla folder. It's good to see you have your bandage off. It looks like it healed and there's no scar, Sierra said. Yes, I had my bandage removed, he repeated. So, Steele. I could guess why you are here, but I think it would be better if you tell me why you are here. Well, Sierra, Steele replied, feeling his practice speech roll off his tongue. I have admired and loved you from afar and of course our son, for so long. The two of you mean the world to me. He paused and took a deep breath to gain his courage and said, I want to make things right between us and be a part of our son's life. I know I've made mistakes in the past, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your forgiveness and trust. I want to be a good father and a supportive partner to you. Will you give me a chance to make things right? Sierra hesitated as she reached for the folder and thought back, remembered the time when she had dated Steele, briefly. As much as she could remember, their relationship had never had a sexual encounter. But for some strange reason, she knew that Steele had believed it did. She knew she needed to choose her words carefully. Steele, there's something I have to tell you. I hope you don't mind if I am honest with you. Steele gave Sierra his full attention. He just knew she was finally going to admit her undying love for him. Yes, Sierra, you can be completely honest with me. Well, Steele, I can't lie to you. But I just don't ever for the life of me, ever remember having sex with you. So, I just can't understand how you could think my son is yours. Steele's face contorted with disbelief and confusion as he processed Sierra's words. He had been so convinced that he and Sierra had been intimate during their brief relationship, and his whole plan had been built upon that belief. The revelation struck him like a dagger to the heart, shattering his illusions and leaving him exposed in his own web of deceit. I don't understand, Steele stammered, his voice laced with a mix of desperation and denial. He remembered Ms. Ad, Sierra's mom, telling him Sierra had no memory of the one night together. I thought we had something, Sierra. I was so sure. Sierra's expression softened with empathy, realizing the depth of Steele's delusion. Steele, I don't know what led you to believe that, but I can assure you that it never happened between us. I would never lie about something like that. Steele's mind raced as he tried to reconcile his perception of reality with Sierra's words. He couldn't comprehend how he had convinced himself of a falsehood, but deep down, a part of him knew that he had constructed an elaborate fantasy in his mind. Sierra reached for her glass of lemonade and drank it down as if it would give her courage. She seemed to be choosing her words carefully when she spoke. "Steele, I assumed you had been shown the paternity testing for my son." At that moment she reached for a folder that was lying on the table. "Here, read it." "The child is not yours, Steele. My son belongs to me and Ryker. I only invited you here today because I thought you wanted closure." Steele's face fell as he heard Sierra's words, his heart sinking with disappointment and confusion. He had been so sure that he was the father of Sierra's son. After a moment of stunned silence, he finally spoke up. "I'm sorry, Sierra. I just kept hoping the child was mine. I can't even begin to imagine how you must feel right now, having to tell me this. But thank you for being honest with me." He took a deep breath and tried to compose himself before continuing. "I understand if you don't want anything to do with me after this, but I want you to know that I will always be here for our son if he ever needs me. I may not be his biological father, but I still care for him and want to be a part of his life if you'll allow me to." Steele's voice trailed off as he struggled to hold back his emotions, unsure of what the future held for him now that he knew the truth. "So, this is my life. Am I to be the lonely uncle who has no one?" Steele said in despair. "Look, Steele, you can be a part of my son's life always, but you have to understand, your brother Ryker is my son's father, and I am his mother, and we are a happy family who wants you to be a part of it, but only if you can accept being my son's real uncle, which is what you are, Steele." A short time later, Steele left Sierra's and Ryker's home and got into his car feeling rejected, humiliated, and all alone in the world. If this was hitting rock bottom, he'd found it. On his way home, Steele kept playing the conversation with Sierra over and over in his mind, trying to see how he could have been so foolish to think he had a chance with her. As Steele drove, he was distracted by his thoughts and nearly knocked down a girl on a bicycle wearing a hot pink oversized helmet. Steele got out of his car to check on the girl and wondered how he missed seeing her with that loud hot pink helmet she had on. "Oh, my God. Miss, I am so sorry. Are you all right?" The young girl looked to be in her beginning teens. Her sassy voice filled the air. "Mister, why didn't you watch where you are driving?" the girl yelled. "You are so lucky I'm clairvoyant. I sensed your car was too close. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Really, I am sorry." Steele kept repeating himself. "All right? All right? All right already? You're sorry, mister, I heard you the first 3 times. Mister, you should calm down before your blood pressure explodes. Mister sounds like you get overexcited just like my mom. Are you single?" "What?" Steele asked. The girl inspected her bike. "Like I said earlier, but you weren't listening, I'm clairvoyant anyway. My mom, she's single, and she's too scared to move on in life and try to meet someone new, just like you. Anytime anything happens, she clutches at her heart and gets extra excited over little stuff too. Just like you're doing now. That's why I asked you if you were single." Steele stared at the girl and then looked down and realized he had placed his hand on his chest. Then he thought he'd heard her say she was clairvoyant. The girl dusted off her clothes. "My bike is okay. So, mister, I'll be on my way. Mister, don't forget, calm down before your blood pressure sends you to the hospital. When my mom doesn't calm down, her blood pressure sends her to the hospital. Though I think my mom is a hypochondriac. By the way, if you don't want to end up being a hypochondriac, you should probably try to find yourself a new girlfriend and let go of the one that didn't want you," the girl stated as she rode away. Steele patted his chest and felt his heart, as he stood there watching the young girl ride away. She seemed to know more about life and what to do than he did. He noticed his heart. It was racing fast. The girl had been right. Damn, what should I do next? Steele said out loud to no one but himself as he got back into his car and sat there on the side of the road thinking. He spoke out loud and said to himself, "It's like I'm at a crossroads. Should I just go home and hide away for the rest of my life, or could there be someone out there for me?" Steele knew he was now at a crossroads, and he didn't know what to do next. He debated within himself on his next line of action. There are two options for me, he thought. The first is I could withdraw from everybody, move away from the city and find a way to heal. The second is I can listen to what that young girl said and find myself a girlfriend. Maybe finding someone new was the best way to get over Sierra. Maybe that's what I should do, he whispered. The second option sounds the best, he said out loud to only himself, as he started his car and moved into traffic. 3 weeks later, Steele found himself laying in bed. He didn't know when it happened or how it happened, but somehow, he just forgot the decision he'd made to find someone new. Especially when the reality of how one went about it hit him like a ton of bricks. He lay in bed and heard his front door ring. Christ, he yelled, stubbing his toe and getting out of bed. He pulled on a pair of jeans and went to the door as it rang out a second time. "Steele, are you in there?" A familiar voice rang out. It was his sister Isabella. Steele opened his front door and stood there. His dark hair was even more wildly disheveled than usual, and a dark shadow of stubble matched the circles under his eyes. "Oh, my goodness, Steele, you look a sight. Thank God I didn't have the photographers from GQ magazine with me today, or they would have cancelled your contract," Isabella condescendingly replied. "Hilarious, sister. Why are you here anyway?" "Daddy dearest is worried about his oldest baby boy. Since nobody has seen or heard from you in weeks, he put the family bloodhound on the case." "Really, Isabella, you don't have a problem calling yourself that? A bloodhound? Well, since I am female, I would have preferred a more suiting name with a feminine touch, like, our family's Great Dame Detective. How about Isabella Goddess Detective? Or how about our family's Sherlock Holmes, or our family's Lady Detective, or maybe our family should call me Empress Isabella #1 daughter and #1 family detective," she mimicked an Asian accent. "Isabella, please stop, you are giving me a headache," Steele pleaded. "Now that you've seen me, you can go report to the family that I'm good." Isabella sighed loudly. "But that's a lie, you are not good, Steele, and I have a job to do. Which is to make sure you are made whole. Now, when was the last time you ate?" "God knows, I don't have to ask. When was the last time you had a bath, because I can smell you from here. Now tell me, when was the last time you ate?" Steele shook his head. "I don't know, I can't remember." "Now we are getting somewhere," Isabella declared. "Why don't you go take a hot shower and shave, while I go into the kitchen and fix you something to eat?" "I don't have any food in the kitchen for you to fix," Steele declared. "Don't you think I know that? I left some grocery bags by your front door. Don't worry, I will retrieve them while you take a much-needed shower." Steele did as he was told, and 40 minutes later, he walked into the kitchen and smelled homemade pancakes. "Something sure smells good. Do I smell bacon?" "You sure do, and I cooked turkey bacon and regular bacon, so I won't have to lie and say I didn't cook healthy for you. By the way, I made you 4 fried eggs, is that enough?" Isabella asked. "To start, yes, but I see you made yourself some scrambled eggs, so." I know. If I don't finish my scrambled eggs, I know you will," Isabella smiled, "that's why I made them. Come on and eat while your pancakes are still hot." 30 minutes later, Isabella and Steele sat at the table sipping their coffee. She reached gently over and touched his face. Her finger cupped his chin. "My beautiful brother, I know when you are hurting. I wish I could take it all away. but know that you will love again. There is someone out there for you. Steele kissed his sister's hand. She was the only woman since his mother died that he had ever trusted. Isabella always went out of her way to make sure Steele was okay. After finishing their breakfast, Isabella suggested that they go for a walk in the park. Steele hesitated at first, but then agreed, knowing that fresh air would do him some good. They walked in silence for a few minutes, taking in the beauty of nature around them. Suddenly, Isabella spoke up, breaking the silence. "Steele, I need to ask you something. Have you been to see a therapist or a counselor since, since everything happened?" Steele shook his head. "No, I haven't. I don't think it would do any good." Isabella stopped walking and turned to face her brother. "Steele, please listen to me. I know it's hard to talk about what happened, but keeping it bottled up inside isn't going to help you. You need to talk to someone who can help you process your feelings and work through your pain. It's not a sign of weakness to seek help. It takes strength to ask for help when you need it." Steele looked down at the ground, considering his sister's words. "I'll think about it," he said finally. Isabella smiled. "That's all I ask. Just promise me you'll at least consider it." Steele nodded. "I promise." They continued their walk in the park, talking about lighter topics and enjoying the beautiful day. When they returned to Steele's condominium, Isabella gave him a hug before heading out. "Take care of yourself, big brother," she said. Steele watched her walk to her car and drive away, feeling grateful for her love and support. He knew he still had a long road ahead of him, but with Isabella by his side, he felt like he could face anything. Chapter 3. Free food at the grocery store. Several days after his sister Isabella's visit, Steele ate the last of the jar of peanut butter and jelly his sister had brought over. That, coupled with his growing feelings of being tired of being cooped up in his house, made Steele restless. Especially once the food Isabella had brought ran out. He knew the only way to get more food was to go out and buy it for himself. Being able to fix a peanut butter and jelly sandwich in his own house when he wanted one, was a must-have on his list. He decided to venture out and get some groceries, hoping that the simple act of leaving his house would help clear his head and come up with ideas on where to go to meet a new girlfriend. As he walked down the aisles of the grocery store, he suddenly bumped into a woman with flaming red hair. He was sure he had never met her before, and there was something about her that he couldn't quite put his finger on. Steele closed the distance between them and abruptly let his cart bang into the woman's cart, on purpose. "Oops. I'm so sorry," Steele declared. "Miss, are you all right?" "I'm okay," she said. "You should watch where you are going," the woman's adjudicated voice declared. Instantly Steele realized his action didn't have the desired effect he thought it would. He immediately knew he had better come up with a convincing line to win the woman over. He cleared his throat and mustered his most charming smile. "I'm terribly sorry, ma'am. It was completely my fault," Steele said, trying to sound as sincere as possible. "Please, let me make it up to you. Can I buy you a coffee or something?" The woman gave him a quizzical look before she finally relented. "All right," she said. "But just one coffee, and then I have to be on my way." Steele let out a sigh of relief. "Great, there's Pete's Coffee right over there by the deli." He was glad that his quick thinking had worked. He followed the woman to a nearby cafe and ordered 2 cups of coffee. As they waited for their order, Steele took the opportunity to strike up a conversation. "Pete's is my favorite coffee," Steele declared. The woman gave him a quizzical look before she finally relented and said, "Believe it or not, Pete's is my favorite coffee too." "Really?" Steele said, hoping it would earn him extra points with her. The woman smiled. "It's probably why I'm on edge. I ran out of the house before having my morning cup," she said. "So, what brings you to this part of town?" he asked. The woman gave him a tight-lipped smile. Well, I just happened to be driving through this part of town. I saw the grocery store and knew I needed to grab a couple of items for a cooking class I take nearby, she said. And you? Steele hesitated for a moment before deciding to reveal a little bit about himself. I'm a private investigator, he said, praying she couldn't read minds and learn he wasn't telling her the whole truth. I'm working on a case nearby. The woman raised an eyebrow. What kind of case? Steele shrugged. Just a missing persons case, he said, trying to sound nonchalant. Nothing too exciting. In fact, not to reveal too much, it looks like the person left their car at Readout train station and took the midnight train to Reno. It sounds to me like a case of someone heading to Reno, to either gamble or file for divorce, the woman replied. Bingo. My thoughts exactly, Steele declared. The woman nodded, but Steele could tell she was still suspicious of him. He decided to change the subject. So, what's your name? He asked. The woman hesitated for a moment before answering. Ruby, she said. Steele nodded. Nice to meet you, Ruby. I'm Steele. Hi Steele, nice to meet you, Ruby smiled. So, I noticed you're holding a measuring cup. Is it for your cooking class? Steele asked. Well, sort of. I drop in from time to time at a cooking class. A friend of mine runs culinary cooking class, and well, this new measuring cup is my peace offering for breaking one of hers. Sometimes I have butter fingers, she laughed. They chatted for a few more minutes until their coffee arrived. As they sipped their drinks, Steele couldn't shake the feeling that there was something off about Ruby. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but he knew that he needed to be careful around her. As they finished their coffee, Steele decided to take a chance. Ruby, can I ask you something? He said. Ruby looked at him warily. Sure, she said. Are you in trouble? Steele asked bluntly. You seem like you're running from something. Ruby's eyes widened in surprise. What makes you say that? She asked. Steele shrugged. Just a feeling, he said. I'm a private investigator, remember? It's my job to notice things. Ruby was silent for a moment before finally nodding. Okay, you're right, she said. I am in trouble. But I can't talk about it here. Steele nodded. Then let's go somewhere more private, he said. I might be able to help you. Ruby hesitated for a moment and then said. I'm sorry, Steele, Ruby said, giving him an apologetic smile. You seem like a nice guy, but I'm just not looking for a relationship right now. Steele tried to hide his disappointment. Oh, I understand, he said, trying to sound as casual as possible. No problem at all. Ruby nodded. I hope you're not too disappointed, she said. Steele shook his head. Not at all, he said, even though he was. They finished their coffee in awkward silence before saying their goodbyes. Well, Steele, I really have to get going. Thanks for the coffee, it was just what I needed, Ruby declared as she walked away from him. As Steele watched Ruby walk away from Pete's Cafe, he couldn't help but feel a sense of rejection. He had been so sure that Ruby was interested in him, but apparently, he had been wrong. His disappointment was short-lived when a young woman wearing the store uniform walked over to him and he caught a whiff of the tray of freshly baked stuffed croissants. Sir, would you like to try a sample of our freshly baked stuffed croissants, better known as pigs in a blanket? Our bakery is famous for them. Steele couldn't resist. These were his favorite and they had been sliced and speared with toothpicks just for the taking. Quickly, Steele reached for several toothpicks and stuffed the buttery, fluffy, meaty, tasty bite into his mouth. Before he knew it, he had consumed 4 and was reaching for more when a voice called out to him. Whoa! Dude, save some for me. The man said. Hey, Rosie, I've been looking all over this store for you, a man's voice rang out. The man made his way over and his hands reached for the tray. "Rosie, you are so lucky. I think you are the most beautiful, kindness woman that works in this store, otherwise I'd be mad at you for passing out these freshly baked stuffed croissants, better known as pigs in a blanket, before I arrived." Steele turned toward the voice and watched as the man grabbed up a handful of toothpicks holding stuffed croissants. "Let me guess, they are your favorites too." "Damn, straight they are. You know this is the best free meal in town? Even if they are cut into bite-size pieces. You eat enough of them, and you can get full," the man said, swallowing hard. "Dude, your face looks familiar. Don't I know you?" Reaching for a couple more toothpicks, Steele shook his head as he took another bite. He looked again at the man and swallowed hard and spoke. "Wait a minute, you do look familiar. Your name is Enzo, right?" Enzo took a good look at the man. "Yeah, it is," said, taking the tray of croissants from the young woman's hands and dumping them onto a paper plate he was holding. "Well, hello old friend, it's been a while. I almost didn't recognize you. But then time has changed us all." "Yeah, you're right," Enzo said. "So, I know why I'm standing here eating up this tray of freebies." "But why are you here?" Enzo asked, stuffing his mouth with another sample of stuffed croissants. "I don't get what you mean," Steele said. "Man, your brother is Ryker Granger. And he pretty much killed my daily chance at regular free meals at Sierra's mom's house," Enzo declared. "Did he now?" Steele injected. "You mean you ate free? I mean regular meals with Sierra and her mother." "Yes, dude, I had it made. Sierra was good for fixing me a sandwich or two to go. But her mother Ada and her sister Tilly LaSalle always kept me fed. Every day they turned on their stove." Enzo beamed with something close to happiness as he told Steele his story. Enzo sighed and spoke. "Nowadays they ain't never home," he swallowed and continued. "Now when I see them, they are heading out. On their way to see Ryker, Sierra, and the baby, at their house." Enzo mimicked in a female voice. Steele nodded. "I feel you on that." Enzo shrugged. "Man, it's like they forgot I depended on them. I got to eat too." "The nerve of them," Steele laughed. "I know, dude. It's like they completely forgot that I was once the glue that kept our little family together. I was the man in the family. Albeit I was the next door neighbor. But still, I was there when they needed me. I fixed whatever they needed, and they fed me. Now they have the nerve to act like I don't exist. They forget this man's got to eat too," he said as he stuffed his mouth with another stuffed croissant. Steele tried to keep from laughing. "And here I was feeling sorry for myself because I don't have a family and you had a family, Enzo, and they just abandoned you and left you with no more free meals. Ain't it terrible?" Enzo said before quickly changing the subject. "Hey Steele, you got $10.00? Enzo asked. Steele reached into his pocket and pulled out some money. "Sorry dude, I've got a couple $1 bills." "It'll do," Enzo declared, grabbing the $2 bills from Steele's hand. Just then the young woman named Rosie returned carrying a tray full of freshly baked croissants, better known as pigs in a blanket. "Darling Rosie. You're back. Here you go sweetheart," Enzo said, handing the young woman the $2 as he'd snatched the tray from her hands. "Steele, say thank you to the beautiful Queen Rosie, for bringing us over another tray of stuffed croissants," Enzo stated. "Thank you, Rosie. Oh, and hold on a second," Steele said, reaching into his jacket pocket and finding a $50 bill. "Here's a better tip. I know this grocery store isn't paying more than minimum wage and you look like you're a college student and can use the extra cash." Rosie's eyes beamed wide as she grabbed the $50 bill out of Steele's hand. "Gosh. You are so right. Thank you, sir. Yes, I am a student." "What year are you and what school?" Steele asked, making sure he grabbed several toothpicks filled with delicious freshly baked croissants, pigs in a blanket. I go to San Jose State University, I'm a sophomore, Rosie replied and then said. If you guys want any more of those free samples you need to go sit over in the bakery section. My supervisor isn't going to let me walk over with any more free sample trays for the customers at Pete's Coffee. No worries, Enzo said to Rosie as he watched her walk away. The two men ate in silence until their tray was almost empty. Come on Steele, let's head over to the bakery, I can show you the best place to sit in the bakery section. A half hour passed, and the two friends sat there in silence devouring another tray of stuffed croissants. Finally, Enzo broke the ice. Penny for your thoughts. Let me guess. You hung up on a woman. Steele. Does it show that bad? Steele said. What's her name? Enzo inquired. She only gave me a first name, it was Ruby. Enzo chewed down another croissant and spoke. So, I take it the two of you are not in a relationship. Nay, I just met her right before you showed up, Steele replied. We had coffee, and the conversation was really good. It was like we'd known each other before and then I suggested we go somewhere private to talk and well she declared she wasn't looking for a relationship and hurried off. No last name, no contact information, nothing. A mystery lady named Ruby, Enzo said. You know if you really want to find her, I know someone who can. Enzo. Enzo Rollins, is that you? Before Enzo could finish his sentence, a familiar voice rang out calling his name a second time. It was Coletta Lopez. sh. Enzo declared. Just as the words left his mouth a sexy woman's voice with just a hint of an accent filled the air. Enzo Rollins, what you doing up in Safeway? I wasn't aware they offered erotic pleasures in the bakery section, the woman said closing the distance as she pushed over a grocery cart. Coletta Lopez, long time no see, Enzo smoothly sang out in a hoarse sexy voice, rubbing his hand across his chin. I see you still dressing in a sexy stylish manner that dictates you're a woman whose profession is providing sexual pleasures, even while grocery shopping. And I noticed from the bulge in your pants that I still can make you get a hard-on even while I'm standing pushing a grocery cart, Coletta replied leaning in close and planting a kiss on his cheek. Whew. You two got some chemistry, Steele declared letting out a whistle. And who, sir, are you? Coletta asked, giving him the once-over and her most brilliant smile. My name is Steele, Steele Coltrane. Well, hello Steele Coltrane, my name is Coletta Lopez, nice to meet you, she slowly looked him over, letting her eyes roam hungrily up and down his body. She knew women who would pay gladly to go to bed with a man built like Steele Coltrane. All at once Enzo loudly cleared his throat. All right Coletta, stop looking at Steele like you're a madam sizing up your next man whore. Ouch. Enzo, that hurts. Did you have to be so blunt? All I was doing was admiring the man named Steele, she wasn't shy with her compliments. And I must say Steele, you have not only a powerful name but a very powerful body that looks like it was built for giving women pleasure on the 3 Ps. Excuse me. Steele said. What did you say? I said I see in you, what every woman desires when I look at you, you see Steele, you possess the attributes of the 3 Ps. Enzo shook his head. Don't start that, Coletta. He doesn't want to know what you're talking about. Nor where it will lead. Confused. Steele declared. Nay, I want to know. No, dude. Believe me, you don't want to know, Enzo declared. Man, I have to apologize for Coletta, you know how some families have that one uniquely strange family member you are embarrassed when people meet them? Well, think of Coletta Lopez as one of mine. Steele chuckled. Yeah, Enzo, I get your point, but I never heard of the 3 Ps and I'm curious to know what that is. Yeah, Enzo, Steele is curious, leave him alone, Coletta whined seductively. Okay, I tried to warn you, Enzo declared shaking his head. You asked for it, Steele. Coletta flipped the hair off her face, exhaled and spoke very slowly. A man's whose body is built like yours can handle a woman's 3Ps, and the 3Ps, well, it's been said when all three are in action it ignites a woman to feel the most intoxicating climax. She paused and then spoke slowly and seductively. Steele, you seem like a man who could handle the sexy textbook version of what I am saying, so I will elaborate for you. Coletta let her gaze focus on Steele when she spoke. The woman's 3Ps refer to her mind, body, and heart. When all three are engaged and in harmony during sexual activity, it can create an unparalleled experience for her. She paused and let her words sink in. Then Coletta moved in close to Steele and said, Steele, did you know that the biggest misconception about sex is that it's dirty, forbidden, or wrong? In truth, sex is sacred. A good sexual relationship is built on emotional intimacy and closeness. When the objective is to see the divine in your sex partner. To do this, the mind must be present and focused on the pleasure at hand. This allows the woman to let go of any distractions or stressors. The body needs to be responsive and receptive to stimulation, allowing her to feel every sensation fully and completely. And then the heart needs to be open and connected to her partner, creating an intimate and passionate experience. When these three elements come together, it can result in a sexual experience that is truly transformative, igniting a woman to reach new heights of pleasure, ecstasy, making her climax the most satisfying of all time. What the hell? Steele said, astonished. I've never heard of such a thing. Man, I told you not to ask, Enzo declared, turning and looking at Coletta. And if you ask me, I think Coletta makes that crap up. Oh, what do you know, Enzo? Coletta declared. Enzo turned his attention to the cart in front of him. Coletta, are those ribeye steaks in your cart? Who are you inviting over for dinner tonight? Stop looking in my cart, Enzo. And stop worrying about who I am having over for dinner. Remember, you just said I make that crap up. Coletta declared. Whatever. Coletta, don't you have some place to be? Fuck you, Enzo, I'm just trying to make a new friend, Coletta declared. No, you're trying to add to your stud stable. Like I said at the beginning, you look like a pimp trying to catch a weak whore, and in this case, it's a man whore you're after. You called me a madam before, Enzo, now you call me a pimp. Which is it, Enzo? Are you jealous of Coletta? She asked. Hell no. I'm not jealous of you. Madam Pimp. You know what your evil ass is possessed by? And in my opinion, it's both. A madam and a pimp, Enzo declared. Frustrated, Coletta yelled. Oh, shut the fuck up, Enzo. I don't know why I put up with you. Enzo turned his attention to Steele. Look, Steele, I enjoyed sharing free lunch with you today, man, but believe me when I tell you, you don't want to get hooked up with Coletta Lopez and her schemes. She'll have you being a sex toy to a bunch of blue hair rinsed hot flashes having old rich Silicon Valley ladies. Who would expect you to rub their wrinkled shrilled bodies and do the nasty with them? They will also expect you to be their nurse's aide when a Charlie horse hit them in mid-course of your pleasuring them. And believe me, that ain't pretty, he said, shaking his head. When a leg cramp hits one of them blue rinse chicks or an aching joint strikes up. Brother, you don't want to be around. Because you are not only applying arthritis ointment, but you're also applying penis ointment too. And some of those arthritis ointments stink really bad. Oh, be quiet, Enzo. Why are you embarrassing me? Coletta screeched. Ah. That doesn't sound like a pretty sight, Steele couldn't hold in his laughter. Thanks for the advice, sure you're not exaggerating, Enzo. Man, I ain't lying, Enzo said. Don't get hooked up with Coletta. Her business ain't a pretty sight. Those old blue rinse broads come with a lot of problems. Believe me. Shut up, Enzo. Anyway, I'm leaving, Coletta declared. Steele, it was nice to meet you. I wished we could have met under different circumstances. Steele nodded and watched as Coletta Lopez pushed her cart, making a hasty exit. "Look, Steele, it was good hanging out with you, man," Enzo declared. "Did you see those ribeye steaks in Coletta's cart? Man, they've got my mouth watering. Look, Steele, maybe we could do this again sometimes, but now I've got to eat and run." "I'm guessing you having ribeye steaks for dinner," Steele said. "You guessed right, my friend. By the way, if you don't find the ruby woman yourself, I might know someone who can help," Enzo declared. "Here's my business card, keep in touch." "Sure thing," Steele said, taking the card from his hand. Steele watched as Enzo brushed breadcrumbs off his jacket and made a beeline in Coletta's direction. "Hey, Coletta baby. Wait for me. You know I was just joking. Wait up," Enzo called out, heading to catch up with her. Steele chuckled watching Enzo and shook his head, thinking what a man wouldn't do for a ribeye steak dinner. Chapter 4. The Ritz on First and Marilyn Monroe's twin. The days flowed into weeks. But try as he might, Steele couldn't stop thinking about Ruby. He couldn't help but wonder what it was about him that had turned her off. Was it something he had said or done? Or was it just that she wasn't interested in him romantically? Steele decided to take a break from his latest investigation and clear his head. He thanked God that it wasn't anything important that he had to work on right away. He decided he needed to get out of the house and went for a long walk around the city, taking in the sights and sounds of the bustling streets. As he walked, he realized that he had been foolish to let himself get so wrapped up in his feelings for Ruby. After all, he barely knew her. In fact, all he really knew about her was her first name. He resolved to put his personal life on hold until he had solved the case. But even as he made that decision, Steele couldn't help but feel a twinge of regret. He couldn't shake the feeling that he had let something good slip away. At home, later that night, Steele sat in front of his television for what seemed like hours before he realized he hadn't turned it on. He reached for the remote and knocked a glass of water into his lap. The ice-cold water shocked him into reality. Quickly Steele went to grab a towel to clean up his mess. After he'd finished cleaning up the mess, he knew what he needed: a night out. It used to work wonders for him. He hoped it still had the same effect, as he went to shower and change. An hour later, Steele got into his car and headed downtown. He didn't even have to think about where he was going. He knew the place. It was the Ritz on First. This nightclub had all the pleasures a man needed to take his mind off a red-headed woman named Ruby, now that he thought about it. Her red. The Ritz on First was in full swing when Steele arrived. The live band playing for the night was called Effie and the Five Gentlemen. Effie had 3 females who were not only her backup singers but double as her sexy dancers, and tonight they were strutting their stuff across the stage, mesmerizing every eye in the club. Steele found a seat and enjoyed the show. The spectacular show and superb music cleared his thoughts of any woman named Ruby. When someone tapped him on the shoulder and asked if he'd care to dance, Steele complied, caught up in the magic of the music and the moment. He didn't even notice the woman who asked him to dance. When they were on the dance floor, his eyes took in the woman he was dancing with. She was wearing a white pleated dress and had her hair dyed platinum white and styled just like Marilyn Monroe in the movie The 7-Year Itch. Steele leaned in close and yelled, "What's your name?" "It's Kim," the woman said, smiling back at him. "What's your name?" Grinning wide, he said, "Steele." As Steele twirled around the dance floor with the woman in the Marilyn Monroe-esque dress, he felt free and alive. The music and the atmosphere had a way of lifting his spirits and making him forget about his problems. But as they came to a halt at the edge of the dance floor, Steele's heart skipped a beat. Standing before him, with her fiery red hair cascading down her shoulders, was none other than Ruby. She was wearing a stunning red dress that hugged her curves and made her look even more alluring than Steele remembered. For a moment, Steele was at a loss for words. He had come to the Ritz on First to forget about Ruby, yet here she was, standing right in front of him. He could see the surprise and confusion on her face as well. Before either of them could say anything, the woman in the Marilyn Monroe dress spoke up. "Is everything okay?" she asked, looking back and forth between Steele and Ruby. Steele took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Yes, everything's fine," he said, trying to sound casual. "I just didn't expect to see someone I knew here." Ruby nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "Same here," she said softly. "I didn't think I'd run into you again." Steele felt a pang of regret as he looked at Ruby. He had been trying to move on, but seeing her again made him realize how much he missed her. He opened his mouth to say something, but before he could, the woman in the Marilyn Monroe dress cleared her throat. "Well, my darlings, we are all here tonight to have big fun. Why don't we all dance together?" she suggested, smiling brightly. "After all, isn't that what we're here for?" Steele and Ruby exchanged glances, and then Steele nodded. "Sure, why not?" he said, taking the woman's hand and leading her back onto the dance floor. As they moved to the music, Steele couldn't help but feel a sense of longing for Ruby. He knew he needed to sort out his feelings, but for now, he was content to dance the night away and enjoy the company of two beautiful women. As Steele continued to dance with the woman in the Marilyn Monroe dress and Ruby, the tension between him and Ruby began to fade. There will be no this inserted audio clip if you buy the software license key or activation key. Steele learned the woman in Marilyn Monroe's dress name was named Kim. They were all having a good time, caught up in the rhythm of the music and the excitement of the night. As the band took a break, Steele said, "Ladies, how about I get us all some drinks? What would you like?" Kim smiled. "That's an excellent idea. I'll have a cosmopolitan." "Make mine a Splits," Ruby said. "I'm not much of a liquor drinker." "Great. Coming right up," Steele said, excusing himself as went to get their drinks. When he returned to the table, he found Ruby and Marilyn Monroe look-alike chatting and laughing like old friends. Steele handed each one their drink and joined in the conversation. They talked about the music, the club, and their lives. Steele learned that the woman in the Marilyn Monroe dress was named Kim, and she was a dancer at a local theater. Ruby shared that she had just started a new job as a graphic designer. As the night wore on, Steele found himself drawn more and more to Ruby. They shared a connection that he couldn't deny, despite the fact that they had broken up months ago. When the band started playing slow songs, Steele asked Ruby to dance. As they swayed together on the dance floor, Steele felt a surge of emotion. He knew he and Ruby had a special connection. He couldn't put his finger on it. Could there be such a thing as love at first sight? One thing was for sure, he wanted Ruby in his life. "I miss you," he whispered in her ear. "I can't stop thinking about you since that day at the supermarket." Ruby looked up at him, her eyes searched his face. "I miss you too," she said softly. "I know it was just that one time. But we can't just pick up where we left off. We need to talk. There's a lot I don't know about you, nor you me." Steele nodded, knowing she was right. "Let's talk," he said. "I don't want to lose you again." "Okay, how about we talk privately, tomorrow? I promise to give you my number before we leave tonight." Ruby replied. "But tonight, I want to dance." "Let's dance, Steele." Ruby smiled, and Steele felt his heart skip a beat. For the first time in months, he felt like everything was going to be okay. They continued to dance, lost in their own world, as the music played on. Hours later, Steele goes and gets another round of drinks for the three of them. While he was gone, a man asked Ruby to dance. When Steele returned to their table, he asked Kim, "Where's Ruby?" Kim tells him she just went to the dance floor. She points across the room. Then Kim is asked to dance, by a man. While Steele is left alone at their table. As Steele sits alone, a loud commotion breaks out in the nightclub. A few minutes later, shots are fired, and screams erupt. People start running. Steele looks around and can no longer see Ruby or Kim. He's frantic and starts across the dance floor, and then he hears a familiar man's voice call his name. "Enzo, what are you doing here?" Steele asked, trying to keep his voice calm despite the chaos around them. Enzo grinned slyly. "Just out for a good time, like everyone else," he said, gesturing towards the panicked crowd. "I saw you earlier with the woman in the white Marilyn Monroe dress. I didn't know you knew Kim Womack." Steele's stomach churned. "I just met her tonight." "So, who was the damsel in red I saw you dancing with earlier?" "I saw the way you looked at her on the dance floor. Was she the mystery woman, Ruby, you talked about at the grocery store that day?" "Yes, that was Ruby." Steele had a bad feeling about this. "Enzo, have you seen Ruby or Kim?" he asked, hoping his friend had some information. Enzo's expression grew serious. "No, I haven't seen them. But listen, Steele, you need to get out of here." "It's not safe," he said, grabbing Steele's arm and pulling him towards the exit. Steele hesitated for a moment, torn between finding Ruby and Kim and getting to safety. But as more shots rang out and the screams grew louder, he knew that Enzo was right. He had to get out of there. He followed Enzo towards the exit, pushing through the panicked crowd as they made their way toward the door. As they stepped outside, Steele felt a sense of relief wash over him. They were out of harm's way, at least for now. "You shouldn't go back to retrieve your car until afternoon, that way the cops should be gone and done asking questions. I'm going to walk over to the coffee shop on 4th Street and then call me a taxi. This is a safe spot here, if you want to call a taxi," Enzo declared. "Thanks, Enzo," Steele said, turning to his friend. "I owe you one." Enzo grinned. "Don't mention it, buddy. Just stay safe," he said, patting Steele on the back before disappearing into the night. Steele took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. He knew that he had to find Ruby and Kim, but for now, he was just grateful to be alive. He pulled out his phone and called for a taxi, hoping that he could find some answers soon. Steele looked at his cell phone and realized he'd never gotten Ruby's cell phone number. SHT. Just as the words left his tongue, Steele's cell phone rang. Startled, he checked his caller ID. It read Isabella DeVille. It was his sister. "Isabella, is everything all right?" "Steele, I should be asking you that," Isabella declared. "I just learned my brother was shot at, in a nightclub." "What? Who told you that?" Steele asked. "Enzo called Sierra and filled her in on what happened tonight," Isabella declared. "Then Sierra called me and told me to check and see if you were all right." "Sierra called you worried about me?" "Stop it, Steele. Sierra was just concerned she ain't in love with you. Besides, you've got bigger problems. Dad knows you were shot at tonight." "Look, Isabella, first of all, I wasn't shot at. Some shots were fired in the nightclub. It's the first time anything like this has ever happened to me. But I can assure you those shots were not at me." Steele paused, thinking about his life. He really was at a crossroads in life. He didn't have a clue how to find Ruby or fix his love life. His voice softened. "Look, Isabella, what happened tonight, I mean the shooting at the club. That isn't the biggest of my problems. I didn't get the last name or number of the woman I was dancing with. It's the second time I've seen her, and it feels like fate has it in for me. I've been trying to find this woman for weeks. I don't know if she was hurt in tonight's incident or what. And now Dad knows." His voice trembled, as he spoke. "Somebody should have just shot me tonight and it would have made my life easier." Isabella felt her brother's pain. It pierced her soul. She softened her voice when she said, "I'm sorry, Steele. I didn't know you had a lot on your plate. Steele murmured, understanding. Yeah, I do. But I'll figure it out. And as for Dad knowing, well, that's just something I'll have to deal with too. Isabella sighed loudly over the phone. You're right. But first things first. We need to make sure you're safe. We sent a car downtown as soon as we heard from Enzo. It's why I'm calling. The car is close by. I had the GPS tracking your cell phone's location. Do you see a black SUV coming your way? Steele smiled wide. I sure do, my beautiful sister. You are a lifesaver. Thanks. Don't thank me too soon. Dad wants to see you. No way. Steele declared. I'll call a taxi. Just get in the SUV, the driver knows to take you to your house. I would never saddle you with seeing Dad after what you just went through. Thanks, sis, Steele said, breathing a sigh of relief as he got into the back seat of the SUV. Isabella put a smile in her voice when she spoke. But you know, if you don't mind using the services of your beautiful sister, Steele, I could help you find the lady you mentioned meeting tonight but didn't get her last name or cell phone number. What? How? Steele stuttered as he sat up straight in the SUV. I have my sources, I'm a real matchmaker, remember. Now tell me all that you know about this woman. Steele smiled and leaned back in the back seat of the SUV and told his sister, Isabella, about meeting the woman named Ruby. Finally, Steele abruptly stopped talking and then loudly said, Isabella, I need you to listen to me. I have been listening to you, Steele, she replied. Steele sighed. What I mean is, I don't want you to tell Father any of this. Father cannot know you are doing matchmaking for me. I love Dad. But he can be manipulative. He declared loudly. Hear me loud and clear. Neither can Ryker nor Sierra, nor your mother, Lana Granger, nor Sierra's mother, Ada. I get it, Steele, I get it. Steele sighed heavily into the phone. You know, a man is just trying to hang on to the little bit of pride he has left, he replied. Isabel could still feel her brother's pain. She didn't want to hurt him and didn't want anyone else to do so, either. I got your back, Steele. No worries. This is just between you and me. Hello there. Book 2 sounds exciting. Right? I hope you enjoyed the first 3 chapters of Book 2.